What if I told you that cannabis could help you focus, stay productive, and spark new ideas, all without getting you high? Well, my friends, that's the power of microdosing. Today, I'm going to walk you through how low dose THC products can support your dopamine, improve your creativity, and actually help you get shit done with clarity, not with couch lock. Hi, I'm Tabitha Fritz. I'm an intentional cannabis educator, and I'm the founder of Level Up. I teach people how to use cannabis with purpose, including how to align their energy and their goals. Now, microdosing is one of the most misunderstood tools out there. So today in this video, we're going to break it down. I'm going to teach you exactly how cannabis can support your focus. And if that's what you want to use cannabis for, well, this is where it starts. Let's get into it. Okay, the 3 points in today's video are going to be: number one, what microdosing THC actually is and how it works neurologically, okay? How it works in your brain, because people have an idea of microdosing and what it means that's not actually accurate. So we'll talk about what microdosing actually is and how it affects your brain neurologically. And then number two, we're going to talk about how it affects your dopamine and your mental energy, right? Because your mental energy is crucial when it comes to creativity and your ability to use that creativity to get things done. And then our third thing that we're going to talk about is how you can build out a ritual around microdosing THC for the purpose of creativity that really lets you get the benefits of it without getting too high. So first of all, let's talk about what microdosing actually is. So microdosing is something that you hear about with cannabis. You hear about it with psychedelics like mushrooms or LSD. You might hear about it with other things as well. Essentially, microdosing just means taking a very small amount of something, so small that the effects are subperceptual, meaning that you don't feel high, you don't feel altered, but there is something that's different about the way you feel, about the way you're relating to the world around you, about the connections in your brain. Things are different and things are altered and things are changed when you consume a microdose, but not to the point where you feel completely different. If you feel completely different, that's not a microdose. That's a macrodose. That's a bigger dose, right? The whole purpose and point of a microdose is to prevent that feeling of alteration, prevent that great big change. It makes a lot of sense for products or for drugs or, for plants or whatever you want to call them that really, really impact the way that you perceive the world. So if you've ever done a macrodose of a psychedelic like LSD or like mushrooms, you know that it significantly impacts your perceptions, your perspective. Everything changes. Things sound weird. Things look weird. Everything looks different. Sometimes you can't even see. Everything feels different. Your senses are impacted. Everything changes. Your perceptions change. There is value in that experience. When your perceptions and your perspective is totally different from the way that it normally is, it allows you to tap into something that's outside your everyday experience. And you can really get insights and have experiences that are quite spiritual and fun and different. But that's not what a microdose is, okay? A microdose specifically is not that experience. It is not that great feeling of being altered or different or changed. It's just enough that it shifts you a little bit without completely moving you off the track. Here's an example. Let's say you and your family are driving down US 131 to the Russell Road exit to go to Michigan's Adventure. It was a little flashback to being a kid. But let's say that's what you're doing. And you're driving down the highway and you're in the right-hand lane and you're going kind of slow and you look around and you realize that all these cars around you are going a little bit faster. And if you maybe just change the way you're doing things, you could get there a little bit faster too. And then you'd be at Michigan's Adventure. You'd be at the amusement park 10 minutes earlier than you would have been otherwise. So you shift out of the right lane and into the left lane. Now you're in the fast lane and you're moving along with traffic and you're going faster down the road. You're still on the same road. You're still with the same cars. You're still with the same people. You're still heading in the same direction, but it's a little bit different. You're moving a little bit differently. You're moving with more intention. You're moving a little bit faster. That's like a microdose. A macrodose is when you like get to Russell Road exit off of US 31 and get off and go down and you drive into this parking lot and you go into a crazy big parking lot and now you got to find a place to park, and then you find a place to park and then you go in and now you get your tickets and you go into the amusement park and all of a sudden you're in a totally different world because there's roller coasters everywhere and there's, you know, cotton candy and food stands and there's Snoopy over there because it's one of those, you know, Charlie Brown theme parks, like the Class B janky theme parks, whatever. Not like a Six Flags, but like a, you know, a Snoopy one. Anyways, that's a macrodose. You have left the highway. You are in a totally different world. You are now in an amusement park. You are no longer driving down the road. That's a macrodose. That's a different experience. A microdose is a similar experience, just in a different lane. Okay? So there's obviously nothing wrong with a macrodose, but that's not what we're talking about here today. We're talking about a microdose. So the first thing that people often get wrong when it comes to a microdose is they think that it's something that you experience and you feel altered. Oh, I feel a little bit high. I'm on a microdose. That's not a microdose. Okay, it's also not necessarily a macrodose, but a microdose is you do not feel high on a microdose. Okay, so that's, first of all, that's what a microdose is. Now, when it comes to cannabis, the microdose is just enough to interact with your endocannabinoid system. Okay, now when we consume lots of THC, we get very altered. You know, our eyes get red and we experience time dilation and time feels different, and you know, our mouth gets dry and we get very hungry and everything's quite different. But when you take a microdose, it just activates your endocannabinoid system. It just gets it going, just gets it moving. And by doing this, it supports your body in releasing small and appropriate amounts of dopamine without a huge dopamine crash later because you've expressed everything in your brain. Right? Your brain only produces so much of any chemical at any given time. And if you do something that like floods your brain with dopamine, it expresses all of your dopamine out of your, you know, the cells that make it into your brain. Now you're going to have, first of all, a huge crash when all of that finally processes out of your brain. And second of all, you're going to have more trouble making more and getting back to the levels you were at ahead of time because everything's gone. Your brain has to make all of that dopamine back up again. Now, by consuming this small amount, this microdose of THC that allows you to just activate your endocannabinoid system, it does this really cool thing where it enhances your cognitive flexibility. So you're able to think about things in a different way than you normally would have. You're able to go beyond the patterns that your brain wants to fit into and see things a little bit differently. So you become more creative because your brain's able to tap into different areas than it normally does. But at the same time, you're not so high that it's impossible to work or to pay attention to the things that you're noticing or to get things done. When you consume too much THC, it can really increase your overthinking. So by keeping the levels low, keeping the amount low in a microdose, it helps to prevent that. And it really just opens up the creative pathways instead of also opening up the pathways that lead to rumination and overthinking, which can basically, you know, dampen creativity entirely. When you start to overthink, when you're trying to be creative and you start to overthink, it's like the death of the creative spark. Because you like, oh, I have this idea. And your brain goes, no, that won't work because of this, this, and this. And also you forgot this and you didn't do this and this hasn't been organized and you haven't put this into here. So when you overthink and then you go, oh, yeah, you're right. That was a terrible idea. I apologize for even having it. I'm so sorry that I even had that creative idea, right? When you overthink, you lose that creative spark. Your brain goes, no, this is not heart-based. This should be mind-based. Let me fix this for you. And it's all garbage from there. Well, maybe not all garbage, but it's certainly not as creative as it could have been, right? And that's what we're looking at. That's what the purpose of this video is microdosing THC for creativity and focus. So you want to make sure that your dosage is low enough that you feel creative and focused, and you don't start to get into that overanalyzing, overthinking mind where everything is the worst and there's no creativity in that space at all, sadly. You can kind of think of it like a volume knob, right? So the microdose allows you to just sort of turn the volume knob in your brain up just a little bit so that you can hear more thoughts and it's amplified, but like it doesn't, you didn't like, this one goes to 11, like you didn't crank it to 11 by taking all the THC. You just took it from like a 3 to a 4. right? A 3 to a 3.5, whatever it was. It just changes the volume a little bit without it blowing out your entire speaker system. So now, if that's what microdosing is, and we've now defined microdosing a little bit better, here's how it can work with dopamine to enhance your creativity. So we know we have scientific research that shows us that small amounts of THC actually increase the dopamine levels in your brain. They do this by improving the dopamine synthesis. So it actually improves the process that creates the dopamine in your brain. This works especially well for people who have baseline low dopamine levels. So people who have ADHD, people who are experiencing burnout, people who, they've been doing things that have expressed all their dopamine and they got nothing left. This would work especially well for those people because THC is going to support the things in your body that lead to the dopamine production. Now, it does this by enhancing the conversion of tyrosine in your body. Now, tyrosine is an amino acid. We have these essential amino acids that are like the building blocks of different proteins and different molecules in our body. So one of those is called tyrosine. And we're going to be talking about tyrosine in some later videos as well. But THC, when consumed in low levels, actually enhances the conversion of tyrosine in your body, which can improve and increase dopamine levels, especially if your baseline dopamine levels are too low. Now, if someone had really high dopamine levels to begin with, I don't know that THC would necessarily improve their tyrosine conversion, simply because, there's nothing for the THC to improve. Your body is already working properly. So this is primarily for people who are experiencing some low dopamine levels to begin with. So that systemically, that's the first thing that THC does, is it improves your tyrosine conversion. Another thing that it does, and this is acute, so this is not systemic, but this happens right away, like immediately when you consume THC, it temporarily shifts your brain's focus from the effort of doing something, the effort of being creative, the effort of coming up with new ideas, the effort of how we're going to do this, to the reward. So what's the reward? I'm going to have this new idea. I'm going to have this new concept. I'm going to have something new, a new way of doing things that I hadn't ever thought of before. It gets rid of that why even bother feeling that, can make it really hard to get motivated and to get started. Many of us, some of us, especially folks with ADHD, we know that sometimes getting started is more than half the battle. It's honestly 90% of the battle. If you can get yourself motivated and get going, you're golden. But getting yourself to that point, even if it's for something fun, like something creative or brainstorming or something you want to do, it can be really challenging to get motivated to do it. So consuming a small amount of THC can improve your immediate dopamine expression in your brain, which makes you feel more motivated to get things done, right? But the key is to remember that high levels of THC are actually going to have the opposite level, and they're going to exacerbate this problem over time. They're going to continue to lead to low levels of dopamine. They're going to continue to make it more challenging for you to build dopamine stores back up. So you want to make sure that your THC levels are low enough that you are not hurting your dopamine production over time. Does that mean you never get high? Not what I'm saying. Again, of course, right? But it does mean that you are being intentional with your consumption and you're being aware. You're thinking about how it affects your body. You're saying, like, how did this affect me? Did this work? Did this make me feel bad? What's going on? You're paying attention. You're keeping track. You're noticing the patterns. You're not just consuming out of habit or, to escape. There's a reason. There's a purpose for it. So let's pay attention to see if this purpose is working, if we're achieving it or not. Because if we're not, we got to do something a little bit different to get there. Okay, so microdosing for creative flow is, it's similar to microdosing for focus or productivity, but it's a little bit different. I think it's more fun because creative flow, I think, is enjoyable. I enjoy being in that space where, I'm sitting down to create an educational video for a client, or I'm sitting down to create a cool PDF guide for my followers, or I'm sitting down to brainstorm ideas for the channel or write new scripts or, whatever it is. I enjoy that creative work because it lets me do things in less of a structured way than I often do them, right? When I sit down to work, I have a pretty structured way of doing things. I have ADHD, so I have a lot of techniques and tools and tips that I've built for myself over the years, which means I have a structured way of doing things. So when I can step outside of that structure, I appreciate it. I enjoy it. So microdosing for creativity is one of my favorite ways to use cannabis, to say, okay, I'm working on this creative aspect of my work today, and I'm going to microdose a little bit of weed to do it, to get started, to get focused, to get motivated, and to open up sort of the creative pathways and the creative flow within my brain and see what happens, see what's in there, right? When you're brainstorming, your brain requires flexibility, right? You got to be able to think in different directions or think of things in ways that you hadn't thought of them before. Your brain needs to explore and to shift and be able to connect ideas and connect things that it hadn't brought together before. That's a big part of what your brain is doing. So microdosing THC can really help because it can sort of quiet some of the outside noise, the other things that are going on, all of the other things that you hear all the time, the monkey mind in your brain. It can quiet those down and then also open up sort of those avenues for creativity. So your brain can start making new connections or thinking about things in different ways or going, oh, what if I put this over here? Or what if I added this into this? Or what if I, did this thing here? THC can help you open up those pathways and connections and at the same time help you stay present, especially if you're consuming in lower doses. So that would be the way that we would want to consume cannabis for this purpose of using it for creativity and, focusing on that creative flow while we're in the moment and doing it and staying present. Some of the things that I really enjoy using cannabis for when it comes to creativity are things like brainstorming, right? Brainstorming new content, like I mentioned, like what kind of videos do I want to make? I will research on Reddit a lot. I research on Reddit a lot for topics that people are asking questions about. And so then, I have written some scrapers. I've used ChatGPT and some other online tools to write some Reddit scrapers. So I love to, sit there and go through everything that I've scraped and say, like, what are people talking about? What are people wondering about? What are people questioning about? How are people using cannabis? How are people not sure how to use cannabis? Things like that. So brainstorming on content ideas, brainstorming on content that I want to create on topics. I like to use it also for free writing or for journaling. Right? Sometimes I like to have a sort of a spiritual journaling practice where I will have a topic that is pertinent to my life or perhaps the astrological weather or perhaps a tarot card pull that I did or whatever, but give myself a topic and then just sit and write, whether it's on my computer or like physically in an actual journal. I love to use a little bit of cannabis for that purpose because it really opens up the creative pathways. And then, sometimes I write down things that I never consciously thought of before, or I come up with new insights into the way that I approach things, or I see my patterns in a different way, right? So like free writing or journaling is one way that I like to use it as well. And then this isn't something so much that I do, but I know people who like to do this, and they use cannabis with either visual or music design, right? So I'll sit and play the piano, but I'm not really a musician. I'm not creating music. I don't create much visual art. That's not really my stream of creativity, but I do know people who do that, and they certainly use cannabis intentionally for that purpose to help them be more creative, right? Like I think visual art is a classic example of how people might use weed or other drugs even to open up their minds and open up their pathways and see different things. Like I know it's not weed, but Alex Gray is one of my favorite artists, right? And all of his work is inspired by his consumption of LSD and his work, with LSD. And those images they're deep, they're esoteric, they're magical. They ping things inside of you when you sit with them, right? They're inspired, one might say. And so that is, that's kind of an extreme example of a psychedelic inspired visual art experience, right? So, but of course, if you're a visual artist, that's another totally valid and viable way to use cannabis, is to use it before you create art, because it lets you tap into something a little bit deeper. Now, if you are going to use cannabis, if you are going to microdose cannabis for creativity, I have a couple little tips that I would suggest that you use. So number one, use it with sort of like a Pomodoro style technique. Pomodoro is 25 minutes on and 5 minutes off. So that's a good way to use it because it allows you to keep checking in with yourself and seeing how you're feeling. If you consume cannabis and then you work for 25 minutes, you have a little bit of a timer. Take a 5-minute break. How am I feeling? Am I doing okay? Okay, keep going. Another 25 minutes, 5-minute break. Oh, you know what? I think I'm going to go have another little puff right now. So I'm going to keep this flow going, right? So that Pomodoro style technique, it doesn't have to be 25 and 5. That's just the number they use. You can do whatever works for you. But having, a period of work, depending on what you're doing, if you're doing something that you really want to like get into the flow with, then you probably wouldn't want to do this, right? Like if you want to sit down and work for 6 hours, like you're that kind of person and that's what you prefer, then you wouldn't want to do a Pomodoro necessarily. But if you're using this, maybe you're brainstorming content topics or, you're doing something that's a bit sort of structured, you could use this technique along with it. So keep checking in with yourself and seeing how you feel and seeing how things are going. And if you need to increase your consumption or take a break or whatever. I also, it's a recommendation, it's a tip, but I don't know if it would work for everyone. So it works really, really well for me to put a little bit of music on in the background because it sort of helps to drown out the extra noise along with the THC. So, whether that's like SciChill or Scibient or some other ambient channel, or I just found this channel recently. I will link it in the description. It's called AI Free Lo-Fi. My husband and I call it Lofi. I don't know why we do, but we call it AI Free Lofi. So it's a lo-fi channel, but it's just like a dude with like a MIDI keyboard and his guitar out in a field while his girlfriend sits next to him and plays with their dog. Like it's so nice and it's nice to have on in the background. It's nice, quiet music. It doesn't distract you. It doesn't pull your attention away, but at the same time, it covers up noise that might be happening. Like my dog is just going crazy. So it covers up noise that might be happening in your world. And at the same time, it helps to quiet that monkey mind that can start to get going in your mind as well. So I would definitely recommend a little bit of music in the background. Binaural beats, maybe if you're that kind of person, if that works for you as well. Get your headphones on and get the binaural beats going. So a little bit of music or sound, I think, goes along really well with microdosing THC for creativity. And then the last thing that I would suggest, and this is, I guess, a preview of a video that we have coming up because we will be doing a video on dopamine supporting foods. So foods that you can eat to support your dopamine production, increase the levels of the precursors to dopamine in your body. But you could absolutely couple microdosed THC along with dopamine supporting foods or a tea. So green tea can help support dopamine and protein, foods with protein in them. So I know like protein's like super in the news now. I don't know if it's because everyone's on Ozempic or what, but like everyone's talking about protein all the time. So which is great because we all need protein. You got to have protein to live. But if you eat more protein and you have, especially foods containing tyrosine, which we will get into in another video, then that's going to support your dopamine levels and your dopamine production in your body as well. So you can absolutely pair that microdose of THC along with some, protein, high protein food, which will actually improve your focus most likely anyways than if you were eating something without protein and just full carbs. So those are some tips for microdosing THC for creativity. Those 3 things. You can do that along with the microdosing to see how it goes, right? And with microdosing THC and any of those tips, the shift is going to be subtle. It's not going to be like if you take a sleeping pill, you go from awake to tired. There is a delineated point in time from which you go awake, now I'm tired. There was a change. There was a marked change, an obvious shift. Okay? Microdosing THC is not going to be like that. You're not going to have this obvious shift from unfocused and uncreative to motivated and creative. It's not like that. But it is a small and more subtle shift. The shift does absolutely exist, but it is subtle. And so you have to be tuned in, you have to be aware, you have to be paying attention, you have to be focused in order to notice it. But once you do notice it, you're going to go, oh, you know what? I feel like starting. And then once you get started, the creativity is just going to start flowing, right? So the shift is subtle. Be aware of what the shift is going to be. And when you notice it, take advantage of it. Go, get going, and do the brainstorming. Do the creative thing that you're going to do. Now, let's talk about how you can build your own microdosing ritual because, at the end of the day, we still want to be intentional, even if we're consuming something that's a microdose that's going to be subperceptual, that we're not even really going to notice and feel like in a big way. We still want to be intentional about it. And creating a ritual around something creates a container or a space for that thing to be more intentional, right? When you have bookends around it, when you have a container around it, you can say, here's the thing that I'm doing. I'm consuming cannabis. I'm microdosing THC for the purpose of creativity. Here's my container, right? I have boundaries around this thing. This is what it is. When we're building a microdosing ritual, it's not about just taking a hit and hoping for the best, right? Like that's probably won't get you what you want. It's really about alignment. And we want to think about building a sustainable, intentional microdosing practice that is aligned both with you, with what you're consuming, and with the outcome that you are attempting to achieve. So there are 3 steps in this ritual that I'm going to give you. Okay. Number 1 is to choose your product. You want to pick your dose. You want to pick your product. You want to pick your consumption method. For these instances, we're going to want to stick with an edible, an ingestible, and an inhalable. So either a vape or a vape pen or, a dried bud that you smoke in a joint or a bong or whatever. So we want to start with something that is known, that we know what it is. We have an idea of how it's going to affect us. We're going to start with a low dose. If it's an edible, 1 to 2 milligrams is a great place to start until you know what your microdose is, right? With an inhaled product, we're going to want to stick with something that has a lower percentage of THC, definitely under 20. Try to get it around 14 or 15 if you can to start. And look for something with a balanced THC to CBD ratio. I want to make sure that there's some CBD in that product to mitigate the effects of THC. I can always change it going forward, but this is where I'm going to start, right? So point number 1 in your ritual is to pick your dose, pick your product, pick your consumption method. What are you going to consume? How are you going to consume it? What's the dosage going to look like? Point number 2 is to choose your time window. Okay, now, when we think about when we're consuming cannabis, that is absolutely going to impact our experience. Set and setting has totally changed, right? If you are normally someone who consumes a high-dosed gummy at night for sleep, and all of a sudden you smoke a joint in the morning, that is totally different. Your body's not used to that. Your brain is not used to that. Your system is not used to that. The effects are going to be much more noticeable than if you were someone who smoked a joint every morning and went out and smoked a joint. When you change things up, when you change your mindset, when you change your consumption setting, you feel more altered. Things have changed. Set and setting is one of the 4 components in the outcome of a cannabis experience. Your mindset in the setting in which you're consuming has a huge impact on what that experience is going to be. Okay, so if you are looking for creative energy, you're probably going to want to consume in the morning. That's when you have the most energy naturally during the day. It's probably when you're the most creative. So we're going to harness and enhance that natural energy that's there anyways by consuming some THC early in the morning. Now, if you're having a midday slump, right? You've got, let's say it's like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You already had your lunch. Now you're exhausted. You don't know what to do, but you still have this creative work that you need to do. Cannabis, THC, microdosing can help you refuel and refocus. Okay, so especially if you've had a good lunch. We talked about having protein earlier. So you've had a protein-filled lunch, you've gotten a little bit of movement, but you're still feeling really unmotivated. You can't get into this creative work that you need to do. That might be a good time to have that as well, right? It's going to give you a little bit of focus and it's going to improve your motivation. If you're not sure why, you can go back to the video that we did on Can Cannabis Help Me Focus, when I break down how cannabis actually can improve your motivation and help you get focused when you're doing something, right? It changes the dopamine function in your brain. It changes the dopamine level in your brain and actually allows you to feel motivated and focused and get things done. So if that's what you're struggling with is a midday slump, then a little bit of cannabis, microdosed THC for creativity can absolutely help you refuel and refocus during your afternoon. But the thing that I really want to caution you about is consuming and then scrolling. right? And we're going to do a video on social media and cannabis and dopamine. So if you are consuming cannabis and then sitting and scrolling on your phone and just like going through reels or TikToks or whatever, your poison of choice is, it's not going to work for you, right? You have to consume and then get into intentional action, like immediately. That's the point. So don't delay, don't wait, don't waste your time sitting there and scrolling on your phone. And then step 3 in your microdosing THC ritual is going to be to track your experience. I know we talk about this in every single video, but you can't improve what you don't measure, right? So you have to keep track of what you're consuming, of how it makes you feel, of how you felt before you consumed it, how you felt after you consumed it, or there's like almost no point because you're not going to have any idea what works for you and what doesn't work for you, right? So you want to keep track of what you took, what you were working on, and what shifted internally for you, like what actually changed. What was different? What were the effects of the product that you consumed and how it affected you? When you do this over time, you start to build for yourself like a map. You know exactly what to take, when to take it, when you are using cannabis for some specific outcome. You build your own sort of medicine chest. You know how to use cannabis for specific outcomes and specific reasons, and you know exactly how to dial that in and do it because you've practiced and you've figured it out and you've kept track of what you were doing over time. So step 3, of course, is to keep track of what you're consuming, whether it's in a notebook, whether it's in the free intentional journal tracker that I have in the description of this video. You can download it for free and use it. Whatever it is, keep track of your consumption so that you know what's working for you and what's not working for you. Now, that's how you can build your own cannabis microdosing ritual. But I want to give you a little bit of an integration tip that you can use right away, even if you don't have a whole ritual built out yet, or you don't know exactly how you're going to use this. Here's a really simple tip or tool that you can try starting tomorrow morning. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to get up and you're going to eat a protein-rich breakfast. Listen, food is medicine, and food is one of our most useful tools for keeping ourselves healthy and happy and for improving things when we're sick. So number 1, you want to start your day off with the right nutrition, and you want to start your day off with dopamine supporting foods. So eggs are a really good one. Spinach is a really good one, right? If you're not sure what else, you can take a look at the video that's coming up in a couple weeks about foods. Once you've had a good breakfast, you want to now think about microdosing some cannabis. So whether that's, a few puffs from a dried bud, or that's maybe a 1-to-1 gummy at a low dose, whatever choice you've made for your consumption method and dosage, you want to consume it after you've had some breakfast. Then you're just going to journal for 5 minutes about what it is that you're looking to create with this time and with this energy in this space that you've created for yourself, right? You're creating this creative container. So what is it that you're looking to create in that time? Are you looking to come up with new content ideas? Are you looking to take some pictures? Are you going to edit some videos? Are you going to make some music? What are you going to do in this time? Journal about that for 5 minutes. Just write it down. Write down what your intentions are, what your plans are for this time. And then begin your most creative or your most high resistance task, something that's really challenging to do, and get into it right away. As soon as you finish journaling, get right into it. Don't have any distractions. Don't let yourself start scrolling on social media. Get going right away. Now you're going to write down how you felt before and then how you felt afterwards, right? So you want to think about, was I motivated? Was I feeling creative? Was I feeling upset? Was I feeling happy? How was I feeling before? Then after I did the creative experience, having consumed a little bit of cannabis at the beginning of it, how do I feel afterwards? Do I feel motivated? Do I feel good? Did I get a lot of stuff done? Am I really happy with the work that I did? Do I feel like I didn't do anything? Was it really hard to focus and get into my work? Like, what happened? What was the experience like for you, right? Write that down. And then do this 3 times within 1 week, if you can. Now, I say for 1 week because I'm speaking primarily to people with a female hormonal cycle. Your hormonal cycle is generally over 28 days or so, and it will absolutely impact your focus and motivation levels as well. So if you have a female cycle and you do something 1 week and then you do it a week later and then you do it a week after that, you can have 3 completely different experiences, and they're not comparable, right? Because your hormone levels were totally different each time, which exacerbates and confounds the thing that we're talking about here. So that's why I'm saying do it 3 times in 1 week. Do this ritual 3 times in 1 week. Wake up, good solid breakfast, set your intentions, journal about what you're going to do, get into it, write about how it went afterwards. Do that 3 times in 1 week, and then you'll know how that works for you and your brain. Is this a tool that works for me? Did it not work at all? It's probably not going to work for me then. I'm not going to do this again. But was it really easy? Was I really able to get into my creative flow? Did it make things a lot better for me? What's that like, right? And if it did work for you, then maybe this is a practice that you want to continue and you want to keep working with going forward. So if this video clicked for you, I have created a free guide, an intentional cannabis focus toolkit. It's a free PDF. It's available as a download in the description. Go get it. It's got lots and lots of tips and tricks and tools in it. We talk about all of this stuff. We talk about dopamine supporting foods, different breakfasts that you can have. There are not full recipes, but there are ideas for breakfasts in there as well, so that you can, know what to have when you want to go have that dopamine supporting breakfast that we talked about in the beginning of the integration ritual. So if this video has struck a chord with you, please feel free to go download that resource, because it's there. It's got all kinds of stuff in it that might help you. And like I said, this video is part of a series on cannabis and dopamine. We talk about productivity, we're talking about focus, we're talking about motivation. So if this topic is of interest to you, please check out the other videos that we have on the topic. Once they are all published, I will turn them into a playlist. So depending on when you are watching this, if you're watching it shortly after its release, it may not be in the playlist yet. But if you're watching it a bit later, that's probably part of a playlist on dopamine and cannabis and focus and productivity that you can watch the rest of the videos and get even more tips and tricks as well about how you can use cannabis for focus. So as we close this video, I just want to remind you that you do not need to be high to get things done. You just need to be aligned. And microdosing THC just might be the tool that really helps you get there. I will see you in the next one.